Hello, demons and the demonic. My name is TBS Guy, and I am still recovering from a rather nasty cold, so please excuse my voice. And Blizzard, at this year's BlizzCon, entirely failed to address the Hong Kong Blitzchung controversy, where they banned a Hearthstone player from competitive Hearthstone speaking out in support of the pro-democracy demonstrators currently protesting in Hong Kong and being brutally savaged by Chinese police forces. Now, you'll see some articles out on there saying that, no, they addressed it. They totally apologized for it? No, they didn't. They apologized specifically for not reaching out to their community and talking to them more, and they apologized for acting too quickly. They did not apologize for the thing they did, which was ban a Hearthstone player because he said something that is annoying to the Chinese government, and Blizzard doesn't want to have their products banned in China. That's the thing they did, and they did not apologize for that. And I just thought I'd bring that up, because it feels a little gross to talk about Blizzard's exciting new shiny products without also bringing up the fact that their corporate management are slimy, cowardly snake bastards. Just want to make that clear. The corporate management of Blizzard are slimy, cowardly, greedy snake bastards who will do anything for anyone who pays them enough money, including protecting the interests of a government that currently has between 1 and 3 million Uyghur Muslims trapped in concentration camps where they're being beaten and tortured on a pretty much daily basis to get them to renounce their religious faith. Just thought I'd bring that up. That being said, the artists, designers, writers, animators, and general workers and staff at Blizzard don't really have anything to do with that. And they put a lot of love and attention and care into the work that they put out, which is why I'm still happy to talk about the work that's being put out, while also shitting as much as I possibly can on Blizzard management in the process. So I know it's tedious and I know it can be a bit annoying, but at several points during this video, I'll just remind you that Blizzard management are slimy, pathetic cowards. We clear that? Okay, good. So the very first thing that happens in this cinematic is something that got a charge out of me personally, like something that I personally, this is a fanboy fan service moment for the old school Diablo fans. And if you played Diablo yourself back in the 90s, as good lord did I do that a lot, you might recognize the gist of some of these shots, because they are, especially this shot in particular, is a throwback to the shots from the very first Diablo cinematic, where we see a pan through a broken down, like, destroyed village with exactly those clapping window covers going on as we pan into a church, which is possessed by demonic power. However, we are not really sure if this is necessarily Tristram. Oh god, I'm gonna sneeze, aren't I? Goddamn cold. We're not sure if this is necessarily Tristram. It probably is, because we have the giant hole in the ground where we think that's probably where Tyrael fell down as a falling star once upon a time back in Diablo 3, the game that wasn't very good. But the intro cinematic does a pretty good job of immediately establishing that we're going back to a very different aesthetic for Diablo. Diablo 3, as many fans complain about at the time, is a somewhat more colorful game than its predecessors. Like, it's somewhat more saturated, there's a lot more, the art style is somewhat more cartoony. A lot of people were very upset about that at the time, and it seems the Blizzard has taken the decision to take Diablo 4 back to a somewhat more gothic, somewhat more dark, dour, sort of wet and soggy aesthetic, which personally I kind of support, but the thing I really miss about Diablo isn't really like the downbeaten dark aesthetic. What I miss is the sense of isolation and loneliness that I got in Diablo 1, but that's a different video. Let's talk about the animation. But yeah, like I said, the first couple of shots here, like, first of all, the lighting engine here is gorgeous, and I love the sense of scale that we've got going on. There's a couple of interesting things going on in terms of composition here. So we have this cross thing, this clearly religious-ish symbol sitting here occupying basically the entire left half of the frame, right? And then in the right part of the frame, we have the village, and look how tiny it is. Like, it is completely dwarfed by the massiveness of the landscape around it. It feels small, it feels vulnerable, it feels weak. Like, this is not imposing buildings and a grand city. This is a tiny, little, minuscule, defenseless village in the middle of absolutely fucking nowhere. And the framing of this particular shot does a really good job of communicating that. And that's something that's necessary, because the very first feeling we get when we see a shot from Diablo 4 is the feeling of, oh, this outpost of humanity is very, very isolated, lonely, and vulnerable in a very, very big world. That's a good feeling to start with, because of course Diablo very much is about that being like one man up against the hordes of hell charging down at you from every angle, which again, it's a different video, but that's kind of something that I've been a little bit annoyed with more recent Diablo games. Then we have this shot, and one thing I'd like to draw your attention to specifically is all the tree roots that are kind of spreading out all over the floor and all over the area that we're looking at here. Actually, let me put this up in full screen. I don't know why I didn't have it in full screen. Look at these tree roots that kind of snake their way across the entire area. Also, look at the lighting. Like, I love the symmetry of this shot in that we've got the church aisle right down the middle, but then we have asymmetry because the benches on either side are all disjointed from each other. Like, they're not aligned properly. So you get this feeling of structure and chaos at the same time, which is a little bit like it enhances the feeling of being kind of disconcerted. And again, it's a shot from above rather than a POV shot of walking through the door, which puts you in a very different perspective. Like, because from above you can see everything, but everything you see is complete and utter desolation. And it also kind of takes you out of the mindset of being in the action. This is a god's eye view. And that's also sold somewhat in the sound design, where you can hear the sounds of the desperate adventurers deep down in the crypts being chased by monsters, and the poor scholar who's like kind of muttering a prayer to himself that really isn't going to help him in the end. I do like the environmental storytelling. You can see they've broken open something with pickaxes, and they've got ropes for climbing down. Now, it's not clear that this is Tristram, necessarily. It could be. But I do like the environmental story. Anyway, again, notice those tree roots. Notice the particular designs and the particular ways those tree roots snake across the environment as we dive deep into the dark. I kind of like the suddenness of that shot. Like, you're suddenly sucked into this void, this darkness. And so we go from this very calm God's eye view that we get here as we're descending down through the hole, and now all of a sudden, no more God's eye view. Now we're on the ground. Now we're with these poor people, these poor bastards. Because, like, from above, you kind of see, okay, there's a man running, but you kind of don't see that one of them is wounded and vulnerable and terrified. By the way, also notice the sigils on the floor that do a great job. Again, you get this mix of symmetry and asymmetry, where you have the symmetry of the sigil in the middle, but then the rest of the environment is kind of fractured and chaotic. And now all of a sudden we're down in a handheld perspective. I have cameras bouncing around, and we're close up with the characters, so we can really see their emotions and what's going on with that. All of a sudden it's kind of shot almost like a shot from a war movie, right? Like when you're down in the trenches with the soldiers, like, we need air support. That kind of thing. And again, it's a very sudden transition. You go from this very calm, like slowly zooming in, calm, steady shot up above to all of a sudden, pow! My timing was off. Now we're down in the chaos. Now everything is moving all at once. Here in the frame, almost nothing is moving, just these little people moving through. But then once you get down here, everything is moving. The camera's moving, the characters are moving, the background is moving, the light is moving, everything is in motion, everything is chaotic. So you get immediately put into the mindset of the characters that, okay, this is frayed and frenzied, they're running away from something. They're in danger, something is wrong, something's bad. Which, of course, is further communicated to you by the fact that one of the dudes has been, like, clearly wounded somehow. And I also like that they begin with the focus on these two characters, who are the central characters of the whole thing, and their relationship is also kind of central to the whole thing, in fact, when it comes down to it. Older, grizzled warrior. He's got lots of scars on. Like, his character design says, okay, this is an old, grizzled adventurer. He's seen a lot of battles. He's experienced. Maybe he's also trustworthy. Like, maybe you can kind of count on him in a fight. Maybe he's sort of an authoritative, not father figure necessarily, because there's not time enough to develop that relationship between the characters, but you get the sense that, okay, this is the older, more experienced veteran taking care of a younger, inexperienced, poor fool who has managed to get himself wounded. And again, all of this is communicated very briefly, just from, like, this shot of him, like, pulling him along, looking over, looking at him, speaking to him, sort of, you have to make it, that kind of thing. Again, we pull back, we get a God's eye view. This is more of an establishing shot of the area, where, like, the shot where we pan directly down and look at the sigil, that's more of a mood shot. Like, that's more to establish the mood of what's going on. We have these eldritch symbols, we have this broken down tomb stuff, we have people with torches running, okay. But where are we, actually? What does the place look like? Well, here you go. It is a giant tomb underneath this tiny, unassuming church. And the characters themselves are dwarfed by the environment, which again, much like the very first shot in The Thing, tells us, okay, these people are small, tiny, compared to what they're actually going through. These aren't small, cramped dungeons where like one person can block a hallway and defend everybody from everything. This is a huge, sprawling, enormous cavernous space, and I do love the intrusion of the little guys that come running. Oh god, that fucking cold is gonna kill me. This is a 9-minute animation video, and if you know my usual pace with these things, we might be here for a while. I hope my voice can handle it. I do like the intrusion, like we pan up, and then all of a sudden these little monsters come charging in from the right, and you can see how they block out the entire frame. Like they all of a sudden they steal the entire shot, completely block out our vision of these creatures. And again, that helps sell the threat of what's coming. Like, the threat of what's coming is so large that it dominates the entire frame, that it kind of steals the picture for a moment. And by the way, speaking of character design, really excellent character design on display in this particular show. We have the grizzled veteran, we've already looked at him. Then we have, like, the large, steady, muscled big dude, and then we have the smaller, more weaselly kind of rogue-looking fella with, you know, the slightly more modern, youth-looking haircut. And, like, it establishes a clear distinction between all three characters immediately. They clearly have very different personalities, they have very different aesthetics, which sets them up, like, to have a group dynamic of some sort. Which isn't, like, it's not something that's explored a lot, but you get the sense that, okay, these are people. Like, there's something to them more than just being helpless victims in a tomb. And the same thing goes for this guy. Like, you see him, when you get a shot of his face here, he's got religious scarring going on his face. I think that's what it is, which is a practice that is used in several human cultures in real life, where they, like, people would scar their skin strategically, or, well, surgically with little knives in order to create particular patterns of scars, which are considered beautiful. And that's something that's being used here to kind of give him a, okay, that's a somewhat, at least to Western eyes, that's a somewhat exotic look. It marks him out as somewhat different. And that's, of course, because he's the magical scholar of the group. He's the guy who knows about all the mystical knowledge, like tattoos and scarring and, like, all kind, like, especially repeated patterns of things are often used in character design to communicate that kind of idea. Then we get the effective use, like, once we get into his perspective, especially this blurring effect, like this, like his vision is kind of swimming before his eyes, which I think is like, it's annoying for me to look at because I want to see things clearly, but it also works very clearly. And again, the relationship between these two characters. Here, we see him from the grizzled warrior's, like, grizzled veteran's perspective, right? Then we come into his perspective, and we see the veteran from his perspective. And again, this establishes that connection between these two characters, like that this guy is willing to protect the other guy. He's willing to protect the scholar and make sure he gets where he needs to go. So we establish, okay, this guy is somewhat sympathetic, he's somewhat trustworthy, which is going to be important later because it turns out maybe, no, he's not so much trustworthy. In fact, he's, well, you'll see. And that there, like, that little gesture there of him, like, hold your wound still, like, just keep the pressure on the wound, keep yourself safe. That's also a gesture of care and caring, which they do a lot to establish that relationship because it becomes important later. Then we have the monsters, and here's, like, is that really, like, of all the Diablo monsters you could have, it's these vaguely, I think, human? They have, like, human-like ears and feet and stuff, so I guess they're ghouls or something, they have teeth, I don't know. And they're not really supposed to be characters, like, they're not really supposed to be interesting, they're just supposed to be a ravenous horde charging forward, and for that purpose, they work very well, I'll give them. But it's like, of all the monsters in Diablo that you could have chosen for this, like, of all the ones you could have picked, this is, like, that's it, like, just these random Walking Dead zombie-looking motherfuckers, that's the best you could come up with. Ugh, apologies. Feels like Blizzard could have maybe done more than that. I do like the, like, look at the rhythm of the way that these things move, right? So they're moving as a group very clearly, because you can see how the line of them advances at a pretty steady rate. Like, they start here, and then they push forward to almost clear the entire distance of the screen, right? So you get the sense that they're moving in a kind of unison, and I like the, you can see the little redness there, as you can see the inner side of the cheek of the thing as it opens its mouth to scream. That little translucency is a lovely little lighting touch. It gives them just that little hint of color along with the yellow in their eyes, which helps sell it as more than just these black and white beasties. And notice also where the camera is placed. It's very low. It's following them from their perspective. Which again helps to emphasize the size and speed and danger of the horde. Like if we had one of those really zoomed out, panned out perspectives and turned out it was just like 12, 14 of them running, it wouldn't look as intimidating. Like it'd still be scary, but it wouldn't look as overwhelming and intimidating as it does when they take up the entire frame, and you can see how they conquer more and more of the frame, and eventually they take up the whole thing. And like, so you get this sense of this horde, oncoming horde of things that are filling up the space, that are like kind of scrambling over each other. I like that little move. Like this one, kind of, you can see how he raises his arm in front of the other. It's like, no, mine! To kind of come forward before them. So you get a sense of their hunger and the danger that they pose. And here's a little effect that I like. Look at the background relative to the guy as we move into the shot. See how the background is kind of moving away, almost as though the depth of field is constantly changing, which again is that like his vision is swimming before his eyes effect. That works really well. To sort of to sell us his disorientation. Like, this guy is disoriented. He doesn't have his full faculties with him right now. And that, again, is kind of important. I love the subtlety of the character acting in a lot of these shots. Like here, this shot, when he's been told, you need to get to the door, you need to get us through, and then he runs off to hold the monsters, right? And you can see this guy literally looking to him. Like, he's literally looking to him for guidance, for help. And as he vanishes, it's like, you can see this moment of doubt and confusion and fear, like, oh god, what am I supposed to do? And then, like there, it's that little gesture with the eye. Like, it's from when the eyes move from looking down and away and kind of confused to looking up and directly ahead. That's the moment where he makes the decision, right? And that you can see he kind of... Oh, I love the subtlety of this facial acting. Like, look at how the little twitches of the lip that kind of... You can see that he's in pain, but he's also steeling himself. He's also going like... I'm gonna get up. I'm gonna do it. God damn it. Even though it hurts. Like, you can see him steeling himself and looking into himself for that power. And that's something that a human actor can do, but which is... It's a lot of, like... When you think about how a rig like this is animated, right? Every part of the rig that needs to move... Every part of the character model that needs to move needs to be rigged to be able to move those parts of itself. So the wrinkles on the forehead, the the bottom lip of the eye down here, or the bottom lid of the eye, every little part of the lips, like that stuff that kind of twitches around and moves and tenses up, all of that needs to be rigged. Like, someone needs to make sure that the animator can manipulate these things. And that makes these models, like, if you ever get a chance to look at them, that makes them like really complicated bits of machinery. Like, they're little extremely complicated puppets that an animator, like, you can procedurally generate some stuff, but mostly, like, an animator needs to look at that and go, okay, I'm directing the actor here. Like, the animators are basically actors because they have to, not directly through themselves, but through their puppets, through their three-dimensional puppets, when it comes to 3D animation, have to convey acting. And so the animator doesn't just need to know how to move things around, they also need to know how to convey emotion with physical body language. And of course, like, you have consultants and you have people who come in and help you work on it, and experts and stuff like that. But it's still, like, I'm always so impressed by that kind of subtlety in acting. Like, well, it means subtlety. It's not like it's... If an actor did this on screen, you would say that he was hamming it up a little bit with his face, maybe. But it's something that's so difficult to do in animation, and that's kind of what makes it impressive to me. So, by the way, notice the mirroring here. Right? We get the monsters charging in... Where the hell is that shot? That's... not there. It's... Oh, it's gonna happen in the moment. It's hard to find individual shots in a 9-minute video, unfortunately. I prefer the 3-minute ones. It's so much easier to find the shot I'm looking for. Where the hell is it? Because, like, it's after... It's after this. Okay, anyway, the thing I wanted to say was the shot of the monsters running towards the group, which I can't find right now because it's impossible to navigate the shit on YouTube, is mirrored by these guys coming in from the right side and moving into the left side of the frame and beginning to dominate that frame. And they line up in the same way that the monsters are lined up. So visually, we're drawing the battle lines, right? We have the monsters charging down on one side, we have the heroes standing tall on the other side. And again, if you had shot them from the back or something, or from above, or just like if you rotated the camera 180 degrees and shot them from the other side so that they came in the left side of the screen, that wouldn't work. But there is this mirroring where the monsters are coming from the left, the heroes are standing on the right, and the monsters are all blues and grays and like darkness and very little color of any kind, and the heroes have lots of like redness and yellow from the light and like red of blood and stuff like that. So there's this wonderful visual contrast being set up between them in the film language, even before any of the action happens. Like, you get a clear sense of what's going on and who's fighting. And I also like the reaction here. You can see these two guys are kind of waiting, and then once he arrives, the leader, they push forward as well. Like, they step forward and go, okay, now we're ready to fight. Which, again, group dynamic between them. Like, you can tell that these people have some kind of internal group dynamic that they fought together before. And the body language between the three is also interesting because, see, these two guys are standing fairly still before the leader arrives. They're just kind of waiting, and they seem a little bit passive, right? They're just kind of standing there. They're not really squaring up or anything. Then when he gets there, this guy takes like that one step forward to go rah, and then look at this guy, because these two guys are gonna stay mostly still. Once they're in their battle poses like that, they stay mostly still. This guy, you can see his muscles moving all the time. He has this impatient energy about him, and again, the body language of the different actors in the scene establishes a lot about their personalities that they have and their approaches to combat. You can also see that little gesture he does with his mouth. There. Like, you can see him taking that breath, like he's getting ready for it. And then we cut back to our poor scholar, still struggling mightily through this whole thing. And you can see how the camera is empathizing with him. And by the way, notice that tree root there. Does that look entirely like a tree root to you anymore? Why is there tree roots all the way down here? Strange. Anyway, the camera sympathizes with him as he crashes into the wall. Look how the angle changes. We get what's called, something I've talked about many times before on the channel, a Dutch angle. Which is basically, you just tilt the camera, and that's a really good visual shorthand to show that a character is off-kilter, that they're off-balance, that they are maybe weakened, or in some kind of a danger. You'll see it in horror movies all the time. Some directors massively overuse them, and it's terrible and annoying, but being put to good use here. And take a look at this tree root? Is that a tree root? Is that what that is? It must be, because what else could possibly look like that? It almost looks less like a tree root and more like, I don't know, a vein in a body? Like it was carrying blood inside it? I wonder if blood is going to be important to this particular thing as we move forward. And what's interesting to this shot about this shot for me is that this blood vein is kind of right in the center of the image, and it's in focus, whereas the guy himself, he's kind of out of focus and kind of relegated to the side of the image. So I feel like you're kind of meant to see this and go, hey, wait a minute, those aren't tree roots. But then he raises his face and he comes up to the middle of the image here, and we see his eyeline, and then instantly we're in his perspective again. And I really like the fire effects. Like, Diablo has had really good fire effects all since Diablo 2 in their cinematics. Like, Blizzard has been really good at doing fire effects before. And here I really like what they're doing with the flaring. Like, you can see as the torch comes up, boom, we get this flare in the camera, almost as though we're being blinded by the light ourselves, which of course we aren't, but they're simulating that very effectively. And you can see as he gets his bearings, as he gets more of a handle on, okay, where am I? What am I looking at? Jesus Christ, everything hurts. You can see how the camera slowly rights itself. As he becomes more steady, the camera gets out of the Dutch angle and into something that's more settled and solid, so that you can really kind of follow what he's doing. And you can also see that he starts to become, okay, this thing. I'm curious about what this is and what it does. And here, I love this shot. Again, notice the contrast between symmetry and chaos. Because we have the symmetry of the cameras moving down basically the center of the path that leads to the door. And so there's like equal distance on both sides, and we have the heroes right here in the middle. They're in the center, like they're literally in the vanishing point of the image. All lines kind of lead towards them. But then you have the massive chaos of the monster horde running, and we're in the monster horde's perspective here, which I kind of like. as a conceit to kind of give the sense of the speed with which these little bastards are approaching. Like, they're really, like, rushing. And you get that chaotic sense of speed as you're charging towards them. And now we're back in this guy's perspective. Everything's blurry. We can't see what's happening. And you can kind of see the jiggliness of his fingers. And something I really like, again, this is such a subtle little acting thing, but take a look at the relative positions of his fingers as he's moving them across these runes, right? Look how they move relative to each other. Like, again, such lovely, subtle animation. Because, like, here they're kind of close to each other, then they move kind of apart, and then they move close together again, and then they kind of... And, like, that little, like, the little wiggle of the finger, like the relative length, and that little wiggle of the right finger, that's what makes it feel alive, right? You can see how his finger is bent here, and then he stretches out. That's what makes this hand movement feel alive. It makes it feel realistic. And it's also helping to sell the nervous energy of the guys. He's desperately trying to translate these things before hordes of monsters tear everybody apart. And then his fingers come together there. And here again, we're getting the payoff to the shot that was set up. Like, we have the first shot of the monsters running in from the left, then we have the second shot of the heroes standing on the right. Now we get the payoff from that setup of that dichotomy where the heroes on the right with the light and the color and the everything, and the monsters crashing in from the left with the darkness and the coldness and the grays. And, oh, it's just a good shot. And I wish YouTube video compression wasn't so fucking brutal to I wish they'd upload it in 4K. Is it in 4K? No, it's not in 4K. Because then I could show you properly, but as it is, we have to deal with all this fucking motion blur. By the way, some of this motion blur is also added in the animation process, like they put motion blur on things to sell the motion and to make it look more cinematic. I wish they wouldn't, because to me it just looks like a blurry mess when I'm trying to go through it frame by frame. Like, why don't they think of people like me who spend hours looking through these videos frame by frame? They should think of me instead of the audience that actually watches this thing at full speed. Who cares about them? They're not important. I'm important. I have 7,000 subscribers on YouTube. Blizzard, why aren't you catering to me specifically, you cowardly bastards who caved to the Chinese government on human rights? Anyway... And again, see how we move from a steady angle as the as the combatants approach each other, and we twist the camera into a Dutch angle again as chaos takes over the entire scene. And that gives us this wonderful sense of the heroes coming down from above in the frame. Like, they're basically sort of, they rise to the top of the frame up here a little bit, and these guys kind of rise at them from below, like they're the hordes of hell rising up to meet avenging angels or something silly like that. And I love that. You can see the arc that the whole horde takes as they leap, right? Like, they move as one, almost like a circling horde. Kind of like one big mass of flesh that's just crashing into these guys. And right as the action is about to begin, of course, cut back to the scholar. And something oh, right, using space. Something I quite liked about this particular scene, and by the way, again, symmetry. Symmetry in the designs on the wall, but then asymmetry from these blood vein looking things crawling across the stonework. And then, like, God, they're really good at animating liquid. And I quite like this shot of him noticing it, because you can see here that he's completely focused on the wall behind him, and then he kind of, wait, what's that? And then, again, the acting of that little jiggle of the eyes, like that there. Just that little subtle movement of the eyes that's going around. That's something, again, you can procedurally generate some of that, probably, but an animator has to make it work. Like, they have to make it look human. And again, that gorgeous liquid animation. And see here. Oh, again, like, I'm gonna gush over the facial acting forever in this fucking thing. Pay attention to his brows. Did you see that? Did you see that little movement? As he's thinking, like wait, hang on. Wait. Blood. And then his eyes open a little bit as he kind of begins to realize, and his brows relax a little bit. And then, like, that little left to right eye movement. And then he realizes, and the brows go up. And again, oh, it's so It's such good acting. Like, it's just really solid acting. I don't know if they use motion capture for this kind of thing. I don't know if they use any kind of performance capture. That can be a way to kind of lessen the workload. And they might have. Like, they might have used some performance capture, but even with performance capture, Mr. Andy Serkis, you dickhead. Even with performance capture, you still need an animator to make sure it looks correct, because the computer cannot generate this shit, even from the most advanced performance capture rigs. Animators still need to be the people who say, like, to go in and actually make the thing work. Oh, hang on. That's not ritual scarring. It looked like ritual scarring before. No, it's just tattoos. Huh. But it looks so different in that other shot. Let me see if you can find it. Yeah, here they look more like welts. Yeah, there. Like, it looks more like they're raised bits of flesh. Might just be the lighting that fooled me there. Okay, well, they're just tattoos. Fine by me. They still, again, the point of them is still to mark him out as someone who is connected to something magical or spiritual or some sort of thing, because he's got these special symbols carved on him. I love that look of... It's almost that surprised Pikachu look, except with more blood and despair. As the music stops. Oh, there we go. And look at that, like, look at that little movement of his lip. You can see he tenses up his mouth and he's like, blood! Blood is the key! And there's something I like about this scene, these scenes especially, is the way that they use light. This is something we'll talk about in 4 hours when we actually get to the latter half of this thing. I think I'll speed through some of it in a little bit. But look at that. Look at the way that the scene manipulates light, right? Like, we get this establishing these four frames of no blinding light, as then he raises the torch, and it kind of blinds us, and we can't really see what's going on. And again, the use of light here helps emphasize the chaos of the scene that's happening. Because we're really not looking at cool fight choreography or like badass people swinging their swords around killing hordes of enemies. These are people in a desperate scrabble fighting for their lives, basically. I like that. You can see him noticing that a monster is about to come up on him, right? He looks to the left and is like, ah! And he gets saved by the veteran, which is a lovely little bit of coordination. Like, you can see the veteran coming up over his shoulder here and stabbing the beast before it can get to him. And God, good lord, you should see a doctor about that acne, dude. Wow, that's oof. And maybe a dentist too, god damn. And again, the scene, look at how the scene manipulates the light. Like the torch swinging around here, and then the monster coming in, and then he grabs the torch and swings it around again. And always the light is blinding us, right? Like, they're making a conscious choice to have the light be this fucking bright, so that when it streaks across the image, it kind of blots out everything else, and it becomes impossible to focus on anything, which again helps sell the chaos. And contrast that with how the light is here, because here we have a stable light source, right? Like, here this is a torch lying on the floor, and all of a sudden you can see what the hell is going on, and you can see what's happening. And here, like, the guy is giving the explanation, and you can see, again, selling it so well. This guy, he doesn't listen to the explanation, he's just like, oh, whatever. Because he doesn't care. And here, again, the camera work is being used really nicely. Like, swinging around, as you can see. Things going, and again, that liquid animation is just so clean. Again, notice the difference in personality between the characters. Look at this guy first. Look at how he reacts to the door opening. Oh, hey, the door is open. But then look at this guy, how he reacts. He sees the door open, and then he's like, holy shit, we're gonna live! You can see that relief on his face, that, yes, Jesus Christ, I can't believe that worked. And then they dash through. Oh, that's crisp. Look at that hair. Like, Jesus, the fidelity of these models is crazy. Anyway, what I really like about this particular shot is the guy's hands. Again, like the way the hands are moving. Look at that. Look at that. Look at that uncertain shaking. Like his hands are shaking, and they're jiggling, and and he's kind of flinching, and he's reaching out, and then he's pulling back, and he's reaching out, and he's pulling back. You can see the uncertainty of this man written all over him at all times. He's always uncertain for the whole thing. Again, until a certain point. Oh, that's the sound. That's not what I'm looking for. Again, light creating chaos, which puts us out of what the hell is actually going on. And just like some gorgeous manipulation of light around the character. But anyway, I said I'd skip ahead of a few things, so let's skip ahead of a few things to some other interesting stuff. Because here, with the monster horde defeated, notice what the camera work does. It calms down completely. No more jiggling camera, no more handheld shuddering, no more Dutch angles, no more waltzing around. Steady angles and calmness. The camera is helping emphasize the emotion of the scene, which is just basic good filmmaking. Even here, like when the guy gets shoved into the pillar, the camera is unmoved, steady, calm, because the massive threat that was bearing down on them is gone, or at least so they think. And that gave me time to blow my nose. So this shot here is good, because this is a kaleidoscope, which is something that I quite liked about the scene, is that this is like looking into a kaleidoscope, like this refracted pattern of, what are they called? Fractals. It's a refracted pattern of self-repeating, it's self-repeating patterns going all the way around. So you get this sense of perfect geometry and math being used in the construction of this thing, which marks it out as very different from the place that, like, where they came in, where we got this shot of the scene where it's like, oh, this is all natural. Like, this is nothing but natural cliff faces that have kind of been carved into something. But there's not, like, every surface has not been meticulously sculpted into anything. And then contrast that with the scene in here, and this is like, oh no, some architect spent a hell of a long time getting this thing right. And again, calm camera, no need to worry. La da da da. And again, the acting of the character, like when you see him do that, like, take a look at the way that he moves. What's the emotion that he moves with? It's impatience. He's impatient. He's kind of squirrely. He's kind of, I need to get the gold. Get the gold. Goddamn gold. And then look at the contrast with the way that this guy's moved. Like, this guy's like all like jutting forward. It's like, where's the gold? He's kind of punching his head forward. And then this guy is more like, you can see he's got his shoulders up. He's kind of slinking forward. He's pleading. He's like, oh, but please. You can see how his shoulders move up and down with his pleading. And his whole body shifts up and down. It's like, God damn, this is like a temple or something. It's terrifying. Okay. Ugh, had to blow my nose again. Goddamn cold. And here's a good shot. See that? Did you see that happen? Look at the color in this shot right here. All the like skin color, you can see the full breath of life in these guys, blood on their face, like veins popping out from all the effort they've been going through. And again, oh, that's that excellent facial acting of the guy kind of looking around, and his lips opening just a little bit as he becomes uncertain. Because like when he's threatening the dude, he's completely certain of everything he's doing, right? He knows, like, you need to give us what we want. So his lips are sealed. But then once he becomes uncertain, his lips part, just like his mouth opens just a little bit, because the tension goes out of him, because he's becoming like more, what's happening? And then see that instantly. All the color is gone. Because not only does this guy get snatched, his torch, like the light just vanishes. And the whole, like, look, all the life that was in this guy, right? Here he looks like a human being, a person with life in him. Here, he almost, like, he's so ashen and gray, he almost looks like a corpse already. The light was taken away. The light, which has been the power of these characters for pretty much the entire short. Like, we saw them wielding the fire against the monsters. We saw them reading the inscriptions by the light. You saw them using the light to control the action by swinging it around and creating chaos in their own favor. Now the light is gone, and all of a sudden, the human characters have absolutely no control over anything anymore. And this is just like, I have a bit of a weakness for shots like this, in the sense that they make me a little queasy, like that. I don't like seeing a human body do that. Like, his arms just break. Like, it's broke the arm, broke the other arm. Like, oh, they're so creepy. I don't like them at all. And this reveal is great. Like, this reveal is just brilliant. Because you can see here, okay, the guy is clearly not behind him, because if he were, we'd be able to see him over his shoulder over here. But then as we move forward, he just appears. And again, lovely horror movie trope being used there. And you can see, look at the shift in focus, by the way, also. Because here we've got the focus all on our barbarian, like, big tough guy. He's in focus in the camera. The camera is looking at him, but then, now it's looking at him. And this guy has all of the power, all of the control in the scene. And again, facial acting. As he goes from like, I'm gonna fucking kill you, bro, swinging the axe around like that knitted brow, the anger, to realizing that, wait, no, they're not usually supposed to react like that when I hit them with my axe. And again, yes, I don't like, no, don't make the human body do that. Ugh. I do like the dangling jaw, like the little detail that the jaw kind of dangles and swings around, like, because it's been smashed and broken. And you can see it, like, again, that facial acting. Right here, it dawns on him. Oh, wait, that's not a human person. That's not a human person at all! Like, that's when he realizes he's dead. Like, he's fucked. He knows it now, because whatever that was, it's not, you can't kill it with an axe, so he's screwed. And I love the nervous energy of the guy, again. Look at him scrambling. Like, whoa! Almost like a cartoon character, just a little bit. But slightly more frightened and pathetic. Again, look how the frame emphasizes size. As our not-veteran adventurer guy moves into the frame, this man is tiny against this enormous pillar, against these enormous magical symbols. He's dwarfed by everything that's happening in here. But this guy, he looks large, he looks powerful, he looks in control. Also by virtue of his, like, confident, calm body language, as contrasted with this little guy scrabbling for mercy, basically. A mercy which, of course, he's never gonna get. And again, notice those patterns? Veins. Blood veins. Much like those tree roots that we saw in the beginning of the whole thing when we were looking at the village. Much like those, maybe not tree roots, that were snaking across the architecture outside. Blood veins are all over this frickin' place. And for good reason. And again, look at all the jittering, look at all the shaking this poor guy is going through. I also like the detail that he's got bloodshot eyes. Like, you can see he's blown a blood vessel in there, just probably from getting hit too many times, but maybe also just out of sheer fright. And oh, again, I have a thing about blood. Like, I can take it. Like, I'm not scared of blood, but I don't like seeing blood slowly extracted from human bodies. I don't know what it is. I think it's a fear from, like, having blood drawn when I was a kid. I just, it squicks me out. And then there's this Matrix effect. As our actual villain comes into play. And notice, by the way, again, in the character design, the difference between our heroes. All of our heroes are dressed pretty much like this guy, in the same aesthetic. Like, they're worn down, they're wearing rags of, like, whatever leather and cloth they could find, like, kind of hastily scrabbled together. Very, very low rent, very cheap looking. Very sort of working class-ish. Then this guy shows up, and look what he's wearing. Right, this is fine leathers embroidered with gold. It's all very well put together. it is, again, he's perfectly symmetrical, which is something that none of the nominal heroes are. They're not symmetrical. They have, like, different bits of stuff hanging on different parts of their bodies. You can see this guy's sleeve over here is not the same as the one over there. They're all asymmetrical, especially with our guy with, like, the one rag across his eyes is asymmetrical. But then the villain, the guy who's in control here, this Hellraiser-looking motherfucker, he's perfectly symmetrical. He's got these, like, things, these piercings in his forehead, perfectly symmetrical all the way down, perfectly symmetrical side to side, which also grants, again, if asymmetry symbolizes some kind of chaos, some kind of lack of control over things, then this man's perfect symmetry gives us the sense that he's in perfect control of what's going on with him. He's in perfect control of everything that's happening. He has no uncertainties whatsoever. And that again comes across in his body language. Like, he moves slowly. He never rushes any movement at any point during the entire time that he's on screen. He's always moving slowly, languidly, and contrast that with our poor scholar. Like, this poor man, shaking, jittering all over the place. And this guy barely just a statue of a person. And here is where the relationship becomes important. Because before, we had this kind of protective relationship with the senior adventurers trying to protect the scholar and saying, no, you'll make it, you'll be fine, kid. And here we have a similar, like, if their relationship was a little bit father-son-ish, then look at this interaction right here. Again, this is a very calm, and he almost looks sympathetic, right? Like, he almost looks kind. And he's kind of, he's gently reaching out for his face, and he's like, hey, cheer up, kid. There's nothing to be afraid of. You don't have to worry. Everything is just fine. And, again, the facial acting. So good. And you can see it's almost like a seduction. A little, like, it almost uses the visual language of seduction a little bit. Like, with this big, powerful, calming presence reaching in. And if, like, and calming the fears of the other and saying, hey, you can trust me. Just relax. And I love this effect, where you can see that there's nothing in his eyes except the other. Which, again, indicates that maybe he's doing some kind of magical something to mess with the guy, because when you look back at our other guy, you can see there's nothing in his eyes either than the mage. And that's where that relationship between them comes in, because there's a perversion going on here. This relationship that before was trusting and helpful and almost kind of nurturing with the senior adventurer protecting the guy, now it's seductive and it's corrupting and it's exploitative and it's dangerous. Like, so there's that inversion of dynamic that works really well for these two characters. And again, the facial acting, notice the tension and release, especially around his eyebrows, as the magic or whatever, the seduction takes hold, to the charm spell, whatever he's casting on him. Poof. Release of tension. And again, you can see, like, unlike with the barbarian guy, who was always like, always angry, like knitted brows, and like, teeth on, always shouty and mad, this guy, there's no emotion, like, there's no anger, there's no hatred, there's almost no ill will, really. It's like it's not like he especially wants this guy dead, he's just useful right now. That little gesture with the forehead, look. Like, there. That's so good. Like, that little raise of the brows, like, just, you came here for knowledge. All the knowledge you want is right here. And he's calming, and he's kind of seductive, and you can kind of see independent thought leaving the head of this poor kid. As he becomes, as it were, convinced. And as he becomes convinced, notice also the change in his body language. Before, he was all jitters, all fear, all nervousness all the time. But now look at his hands. Steady as a rock. Look at his face. Steady as a rock. Completely calm. Completely serene. So, like, that change in the body language. Like, the body language was exaggerated earlier. He was like a scared little rabbit. But now, he's mirroring the body language of the demon. And this shot is so cool. Like, where the camera is fixed on him, And it's almost like the whole room is rotating around him, like the world is moving around him. Because that's how he feels. Like right now, because he's under this mind control spell, this charm, everything is all right. The world revolves around me. I'm the center of the universe. Nothing bad could possibly happen. I'm in control of everything that happens. But from our perspective, we can see, oh, no, wait, you've just been turned upside down on the pillar like the other guys. You're dead. And that becomes abundantly clear here as these tendrils of blood spill out. And here we get like classic psychedelic imagery with like rapid flashes between images. Like that. And we see the eyes of the person that he's about to unleash on the world. And then the tapestry of blood weaves itself in veins. You can see the veins inscribed into the whole, like just veins all over the place. But you can also see, like if you look closely, it forms a little bit. You can see that these dark areas of blood forming a 5-point star almost. A pentagram, which is, again, one of the things Diablo is very fond of as a franchise of using is pentagrams all over the place. But, like, look at the veins. It looks like skin, basically. Or a womb. And what's in the womb? Well, there. Two things happening here. This is an angel. You can see that because of the golden shimmering wings on their back. It's also an angel being held in bondage, and I mean bondage like both in the sense of being trapped and also in the sense of this looks like bondage gear. So I feel like there's a lot of appropriation of imagery from like Clive Barker's Hellraiser, like that kind of thing, with the bondage imagery being used to terrify and sort of create this horrifying asymmetry. And here you can see the baby beginning to break. This is a womb. This is birth imagery, by the way, which makes sense because Lilith is the mother of Sanctuary. Apparently, she's the one who created the human world of Sanctuary in this mythos. I need to read up on my Diablo lore because I haven't cared about it since Diablo 3 at all. And this is, she's being born. Like, that's what's happening. She's being born, and she's breaking through, like, the placenta or whatever. It's just, oh god, that bursting, like that kind of the flesh bursting over her face thing is like, oh, it's gross. And here, by the way, the skull of Diablo, which is some imagery that has appeared in other concept art for the game, but like the burst, right as it bursts over, you can see the tension rate rising and rising and rising and rising and rising, and then it's so gross. It's so grody. Oh, this video is getting demonetized for sure. But then as she appears, there's this contradiction. Because her features are incredibly well formed. Like, this is a woman who would be beautiful if we couldn't see her skull inside of her head and all of the veins in her body and all of the bones. And like, oh. So there's this contradiction. Not sure what this shot is referencing, necessarily. And again, bursting through the... So, again, perfectly formed. Like, this is not some malformed fetus that's coming out here. This is a fully formed something or other. And you can see the bones inside her hand. And then again, the imagery of seduction, the imagery of romance is being employed here. With, like, two hands reaching out for each other and just lightly touching each other. Like, this is almost like Phantom of the Opera-ish. As our poor guy draws his last breath, and we zoom out, and you can see his pupils are about to dilate completely because, well, he's dead. And so the muscles don't contract anymore. And he ends with a look of complete surprise on his face. But again, the imagery of romance. You can see rose petals falling down and this divine bright light coming down from above as this man receives, well, not his lover, but someone who's being visually cast as a kind of lover figure to him. And again, all the bones! Ah! Oh, I don't like it. What I do like is the gentleness. Like, look at the gentleness of this scene. There's no... It's not like when I think back to cinematics like Diablo 3, the Lord of Destruction. Like Baal, when he approaches the barbarian kingdoms with his army and is all like, rah, rah, aggression, power, rah, evil, army, rah. All of that. None of that is here. There's no aggression. There's no anger. There's not even any explicit evil, except for all the bones and the claws and this guy clearly being some kind of satanic cult leader. But there's no explicit evil here. It's all feeling and slow, languid emotion. And again, almost like romance, this delicate first touch of the foot up on the floor, which might be erotic, if not for all the bones. I can't get... Oh, that effect, that translucency effect is fucking with me, man. And this look on his face, like, again, it's almost like someone seeing a long-lost lover for the first time. Or indeed, as the case may be here, his mother, which, as Oedipus has taught us, is not always exclusive categories. Anyway, oh god, the translucency is so cool. And again, look at her facial acting. Like, when he's looking up to her in complete and utter reverence. Like, he's completely enraptured by her. He belongs to her. You can see it in him. That he just cares about nothing except her. He's looking at nothing except her. But what's she looking at? She's not looking at him. She does not give a shit about him right now. She is looking ahead to something else. She's got something in mind. She has got a vision. And we might not like what that vision turns out to be. And now she acknowledges him. Now she looks down. And this shot, again, with all the veins and the blood, you can see her heart pumping in her chest. Like, look at that. Oh, you can see it pumping. Oh, it's so gross. But this shot is motherfucking art. Like, this is it's horrifying. And it's absolutely gorgeous. Like, this is beautiful. Like, aesthetically, with the bright shaft of light coming down from above, this giant cloak dominating the room, in a slightly asymmetrical shape, her in the middle, even though she's tiny relative to what's happening, everything's framing her. You can see the columns are framing her, like in this box on the floor, and the cape itself attaches to her and crowns her as monarch, as queen, basically. Like, that's what this whole image is about, and her loyal knight kneeling at her feet, you know, welcoming her home. It's absolutely beautiful, and it's absolutely horrifying. Anyway, that's the Diablo 4 cinematic announce trailer. That only took about an hour. I thought it would take a few more, but I had the good sense to skip ahead just a little bit. So anyway, not sure if I'm going to be playing Diablo. Blizzard remains absolute fucking craven, greedy cowards. And all of their management and all of their CEOs and shareholders should be fucking ashamed of themselves. They won't be, but they should be. Maybe they should be fired. Like, maybe if you're out there in the world and you have the opportunity to vote in American elections, maybe elect some people who would, like, actually fuck with a company like Blizzard when they do shit like that, who would actually draft some legislation to make it illegal for an American company to aid in the political repression of democracy protesters in a place like maybe you'd have to be careful about exactly how that kind of legislation was worded, but put the fear of God into Blizzard. That would be nice. Write some protest letters, like call your representatives. Don't harass Blizzard staff on Twitter or social media. Please don't do that, because the community managers, the artists, the developers, they don't have any say in this shit. It's not their fault. Like, they also disagree with it, I promise you. But the CEOs, the executives, those millionaires sitting on top of the pile, raking in truly so much fucking money from the Chinese market, maybe send one or two angry words their way. Don't be assholes, but, you know, just say, hey, you're a snake bastard and I don't trust you and you should feel ashamed, because it fucking sucks when a company that's run by absolute snake bastards puts out work that is objectively beautiful and worth talking about. It fucking sucks. So support unionization in the games industry. Support, like, developers and staff at these companies pushing back against the awful corporate decisions of their paymasters and overlords. Do your best to try and help the industry become a better place, because it's ultimately up to us to help that thing be real. And I hate preaching about this stuff, but, like, fucking seriously, Blizzard, you snake bastard, cowardly... Anyway, if you've enjoyed this video, despite my ranting, you can hit the like button, comment button, and subscribe buttons. Those buttons are helpful. They help a channel like mine stay alive. You can also, if you are so inclined, support the channel more directly via Patreon. $1 a month if you feel like that. And I also have some tip jars down in the description where you can give me a one-time tip to say, hey, you said bones many times at the end of this for some reason. Here, have $3. Go to therapy about that. You can do that as well. I also have a second channel where I'm playing through various games like The Outer Worlds, and I've just started trying to write a novel. So if you want to watch 2.5 hours of typing, that's over there. That's a bad sell for the channel. I'm playing The Outer Worlds, and I'm screaming a lot about how space capitalism is bad. So if you're interested in that, that's over there as well. I have a merchandise store. Good lord, I need to remember to mention that, which you can also go and look at. There's not much on it, but there's a few things, and I'm wearing one of them right now, and it's very comfy. What else? Right. If you don't want to support me on Patreon, that's completely okay. Like, don't worry about it. It's enough that you have watched the video this far. But the one thing I will encourage you to is, if there are content creators whose work you really enjoy, whose work you really like, $1 to people like us can be the same as thousands of views on a video. Like, literally thousands of views on a video can be generated, like, in value from just $1. So whether it's me or it's someone else, if there is a content creator, especially smaller content creators whose work you enjoy, please consider supporting them directly with anything, whatever you can, because it makes so much more of a difference than you think, and so much more of a difference than it feels like. If you haven't enjoyed this video, of course, you can click the dislike button down below, and I'm sure that's completely safe. The dislike button isn't some gateway to an ancient dimension where an evil from before the beginning of time was imprisoned who will slowly suck the blood from your body to form itself a terrifying womb through which it will enter into the mortal realms once again and lay waste to all of those who put them in that prison. That's just an old fairy story that your grandmother told you. My grandmother told me, anyway. I don't know what your grandmother told you. Lies, probably. They're all lies. None of that's true. That's not gonna happen. It's completely safe. Just click the dislike button. It's okay. Release her. Release her. Thank you very much for watching.